You know, life has a peculiar way of introducing you to yourself, not through applause, but through adversity. It doesn't ask politely. It throws you into moments that bruise your ego, bend your plans, and test your inner wiring. And it's in those moments when the lights go out, when the crowd walks away, that you meet the version of you that no success ever reveals. That's what failure does. It doesn't break you. It reveals you. And what you do next, well, that's where growth begins. Failure is never the end, though it sure feels like it sometimes. When your plans crumble, your confidence shakes, and the silence gets louder than your belief. It's easy to think it's all over. But that's only if you see failure as a wall. What if you saw it as a doorway instead? A doorway that only opens after you've fallen flat. Only after you've been humbled enough to listen to what you once ignored. That's the beginning of wisdom. You see, most people confuse the event with the identity. They say, I failed. And somewhere along the way, they start believing, I am a failure. That shift in thinking is where growth dies. But if you can separate the two, if you can say, this failed, but I'm still learning, you reclaim your power. You start again, but this time with information. That's not starting over. That's starting higher. In my early years, I remember failing at something simple door-to-door selling. I knocked. I stuttered. I got rejected. Again and again. I almost gave up. But instead of quitting, I asked myself, why isn't this working? Asterisk. Not, why am I no good? Asterisk. Just, what do I need to change? Asterisk. That one shift in question changed everything. I studied communication. I rehearsed my pitch. I started listening more than I talked. And slowly, I got better. That failure didn't bury me. It built me. See, success doesn't come from avoiding the fall. It comes from learning how to land, how to gather yourself, and how to rise differently. That's what failure does. It gives you a clearer mirror. It strips away the illusions, the fluff, the ego, and it shows you what's real. And if you can stay humble long enough to receive that lesson, you come back stronger. Not despite the fall, but because of it. Failure then is not your enemy. It's your invitation to wisdom signed, sealed, and delivered by life itself. People often misunderstand failure. They think it means something's wrong with them, that they weren't strong enough, smart enough, disciplined enough. But the truth is, you don't fail because you're weak. You fail because you were brave enough to try. And let me tell you, in a world where most people choose comfort over challenge, just showing up and attempting something worthy is a sign of strength. You see, weakness avoids effort. Weakness hides behind someday. But courage walks into uncertainty knowing full well there's a risk. That's what failure really is. A byproduct of movement, of momentum, of the decision to trade the illusion of safety for the possibility of growth. I remember the first time I stepped on stage to give a talk. My hands were shaking. My voice cracked halfway through. And when I finished, I was convinced I had ruined the moment. But do you know what I realized? That moment didn't make me weaker. It proved that I had crossed a threshold. I had done something most people would rather avoid. I faced the possibility of embarrassment for the sake of growth. And that experience taught me more about myself than any victory could have. It taught me how to stand in discomfort and still move forward. You don't get strong by avoiding pressure. You get strong by being willing to endure it, by choosing to act even when there's no guarantee of applause. That's bravery. And that kind of bravery, it might fail at first, it might fall short, but over time it forms the foundation of character, of discipline, and of wealth, not just financially, but personally. So the next time you fall short, don't beat yourself up for it. Instead, recognize it for what it really is, a sign that you are in motion. And motion, even when it misses the mark, always moves you forward. Failure often comes dressed in rejection, and it's easy to get caught up in the sting of being turned away or overlooked. But here's the thing, rejection itself isn't the lesson. It's the reflection that follows that holds the real treasure. When you face a setback, it's natural to feel disappointed, maybe even defeated. But the moment you pause and look inward, that's where the wisdom begins. I remember early on in my career when a deal I thought was sealed suddenly fell through. It hit hard. The rejection felt personal. But after the initial disappointment, I sat down and asked myself some tough questions. Where did I miscommunicate? What assumptions was I making? What part of my approach was off? Instead of blaming the other person or writing it off as bad luck, I took responsibility for what I could control. And that reflection revealed weaknesses in my preparation and areas where I needed to grow. Great thinkers before us understood this well. Confucius said, "By three methods, we may learn wisdom. First, by reflection, which is noblest. Second, by imitation, which is easiest. And third, by experience, which is the bitterest." Reflection is noblest because it requires humility, the willingness to look in the mirror and see not just the failure, but the causes behind it. It's in that honest self-examination where you become a student of your own life. You discover patterns, habits, and beliefs that either serve you or sabotage you. And when you take the time to understand these reflections, rejection loses its power to discourage and instead becomes fuel for smarter decisions. So remember, the greatest lessons aren't hidden in the rejection itself, but in the reflections it forces you to make. That is where true growth takes root. When failure comes, it's easy to let it shape how you see yourself, to let one fall define your entire story. But remember, what happened is not who you are. It's just what happened. The moment you start saying, "I failed," as if it's a permanent label, you trap yourself in a prison of your own making. You become a prisoner not of circumstance, but of your own identity. I've seen many people fall into this trap, successful people who hit a rough patch and suddenly feel like imposters. They start believing the lie that one mistake means they're failures. But the truth is, failure is an event, not an identity. You are not your setbacks. You are the sum of your efforts to rise above them. Long ago, a mentor told me, "Jim, your reputation is what people think of you. Your character is what you know about yourself. And character isn't shaken by one missed step. Character is built in how you respond, how you get up, and how you keep moving forward." The great Ralph Waldo Emerson said, "Our greatest glory is not in never failing, but in rising every time we fail. It's the rising that defines you, not the falling. Think of the bamboo tree, which bends in the storm but does not break. Its resilience comes from flexibility and an unwavering root system beneath the surface. So must you be. Don't let a fall dig a trench around your identity. Instead, let it deepen your roots, strengthen your resolve, and sharpen your vision for what's next. Remember, your story isn't written by one stumble. It's written by every step you take after. Keep writing. Failure isn't a verdict, it's a conversation. It's feedback sometimes, hard to hear, but always honest. When you're willing to listen, failure tells you exactly what needs fixing, what habits need changing, what thinking needs sharpening. Yet so many people treat failure like a final judgment instead of the starting point for improvement. Early in my journey, I made the mistake of ignoring feedback. I thought that if I just worked harder, things would fall into place. But life had a different lesson for me. After a business setback, instead of analyzing what went wrong, I blamed circumstances and walked away, discouraged. It took time, but eventually I realized that failure was handing me a blueprint not to give up, but to rebuild smarter. The great Aristotle once said, "We are what we repeatedly do." Excellence, then, is not an act, but a habit. And the habit of champions is to treat feedback, even the painful kind, as fuel. They don't shy away from it. They welcome it at breakfast as the first and most important meal of the day. It nourishes their growth. So, don't just see failure as a wall. See it as a signpost directing you to change course. The question isn't, why did I fail? But, what did I learn? And how will I use this insight to move forward better? The most successful people aren't those who avoid failure. They're the ones who fail fast, learn quickly, and adjust constantly. They use failure as a teacher, not a tormentor. And that's the difference between staying stuck and moving steadily toward greatness. Growth never comes without discomfort. It demands honesty sometimes, the kind that feels like a punch to the gut. When failure visits, it hands you a mirror. But that mirror doesn't just reflect your mistakes. It reveals your blind spots, your assumptions, your weaknesses. And asking the hard questions about those truths, that's where the real growth begins. I remember a time when my business wasn't growing despite all my efforts. I kept blaming the market, the economy, even my team. But deep down, I knew something wasn't right. It took a quiet moment of reflection and the courage to ask myself, what am I doing that's holding this back? That question was uncomfortable because it forced me to admit I wasn't as disciplined or focused as I thought. But that admission opened the door to change. I reworked my daily habits, improved my priorities, and started holding myself accountable in ways I hadn't before. And that made all the difference. As Socrates said, the unexamined life is not worth living. It's a tough truth, because it means you can't hide from yourself if you want to grow. You have to lean into the discomfort of reflection and let those honest questions shape your next steps. It's tempting to dodge them, to find excuses, or to blame outside forces. But growth refuses shortcuts. It demands you look at the facts, even when they're ugly, and use them as stepping stones. So, when failure shakes your world, don't rush past the pain or silence the questions. Sit with them. Ask yourself what you really need to change, where you need to stretch, and how you can come back stronger. Because that kind of honest self-inquiry isn't easy, but it's the path to real transformation. When failure strikes, it often brings a heavy loneliness with it. Isolation feeds shame, making the pain grow louder in the silence. But strength, real strength, doesn't come from going it alone. It comes from connection finding those who will hold space for your truth without judgment, who reflect your worth back to you when you forget it yourself. I've learned through experience that the journey isn't meant to be walked solo. Early on, I tried to carry my struggles in silence, thinking I had to prove I was strong by handling everything myself. But that only deepened the weight and slowed my progress. It was only when I opened up to trusted mentors and friends, allowing myself to be vulnerable, that I found new energy to rise. As Helen Keller said, "Alone we can do so little. Together we can do so much." Connection doesn't erase failure, but it dilutes shame and multiplies resilience. It reminds you that you're not defined by your falls, but by your willingness to show up, surrounded by those who lift you higher. Don't let isolation trap you in shame. Reach out. Build your circle. Let connection be the fuel that carries you through your hardest moments and into your strongest growth. As we come to the close of this conversation, remember this. Failure is not the enemy. It's the companion on your journey to growth. It's the teacher that offers lessons no success ever could, the mirror that reflects what you need to see, and the forge that strengthens your character. Every stumble, every setback, every no you've faced isn't a signal to quit, but an invitation to rise smarter, wiser, and more determined. Don't let failure define you or discourage you. Instead, let it refine you. Embrace it with courage. Learn from it with humility. Use it as the fuel to keep moving forward, building not just wealth in your bank account, but wealth in your mind, your habits, and your character. So here's my challenge to you. The next time you face a failure, don't run from it. Don't hide. Don't wallow. Sit with it. Study it. Ask yourself the hard questions. What can I learn here? How can I grow? Then act. Take what you've learned and make it the foundation for your next step. Your future isn't written by what knocks you down, but by how you rise. Rise today. Rise now. Transform failure into growth and watch your life change in ways you never imagined.